Hi everyone, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author of the Earthman Jack Space Saga. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an independent author who has been working full-time as an author since about 2012, that time frame. So I've been in it about, like almost a decade now. I've been in the indie author lifestyle for quite some time. And during that time, I've been blessed to meet a variety of different authors in a variety of different genres, some of which are independent authors, and some of which used to be traditionally published and they moved to independent and stuff like that. And I just wanted to take a moment to talk to you guys about what happened in 2020. The indie author train is a very liberating experience. I came from Hollywood, and when I was in Hollywood, I was a writer, I was a director, and I dealt with a lot of issues where I had to basically compromise my vision for other people because you'd have a producer who wouldn't want to give you the time of day unless you kind of towed to his bad ideas, and agents who didn't want to give you the time of day unless like you wrote something marketable. And so sometimes your own personal creative impulses didn't go with what could make you earn a living. And one of the great things about being an independent author, at least in the beginning, was that I didn't have to answer to anyone. I could follow my own creative vision and make a living off of that. And in 2012, 2011, that time frame when I started really focusing in on becoming a full-time author, which meant that I didn't have another job where I was making money. I was just making money solely off my books. It was a very different landscape than it is today. It was a lot easier to get discovered on Amazon. Book sales were your primary focus as opposed to page reads. It was kind of like the wild, wild west. And when I released my first book, Earthman Jack versus the Ghost Planet, back in 2012, it premiered to great success. I released it over the 4th of July weekend, and it made a lot of money over that weekend. I kind of put it up and forgot about it. And I was like, yeah, nobody's going to read my stuff. I'm just going to pop it up there. And, to my great surprise, I guess a lot of people were looking for some science fiction over the course of that 4th of July weekend because I think I premiered at #1 on the Kindle like science fiction charts or something like that. And so that gave me not only a good boost of money, but that book had taken me 5 years to write because I was working a different job. So I was kind of working on it off and on. And it was a big confidence booster. And it was something that kind of said to me, like, hey, you know what? There might be something to being an independent author here because I didn't need to spend time querying agents. I didn't need to spend time dealing with a publisher. I didn't need to spend time, basically doing all the stuff that I hated doing when I was working in Hollywood. And it was very liberating. And, I made some good money off of that. And so, like, I decided, you know what? I'm going to pursue this as a career. And over the course of the past 9 years, that's what I've done. I've haven't had any other job. I've subsisted entirely off of my book income. And I'm not as successful as some of the other authors that you might know in the independent author arena. I made like a low 5-figure income off of my books. But then again, it took me a while to write my books. I didn't have 20, 30, 40 books out in my back end. I still don't, even after 9 years. I think I've got maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 books out there that I can attribute to my overall income. So, as you can see, it's like less than a book a year that I have put out over the course of my career as an independent author. Yet I was still able to make, a pretty decent living doing that. And, I don't say that to brag. I'm just trying to let you guys know the basis from where I'm coming from. The reason I'm making this video is because I've noticed that there have been a lot of people very frustrated and despairing about their choice to pursue being an author, especially after 2020. And I just wanted to address this real quick. I'm not someone who's at the top of the game. I'm not making, 6 figures a year or 7 figures a year off of their books. Unfortunately, don't get me wrong, I'd like to be, but I'm kind of in the mid level, not quite a whale, not quite a dolphin, but somewhere a little bit above a prawn, I guess you'd say. I feel like I'm in a good position to talk to people about the realities of being an independent author in 2021 as opposed to, some of the people who like have more of a track record, I guess you could say. Um, I recently spoke to another author friend of mine, and this phone call, we spoke on the phone about for an hour and a half. And this is a guy that I met at the last 20 books to $50,000 conference. The one that's put on by Michael Anderle. And I love going to that conference. I'm really sad that, we weren't able to do it in 2020, but in 2019, I met this guy and, we kind of hit it off, and I've done some book covers for him and things of that nature. And he was just really frustrated and upset and kind of despairing about, the current state of his book sales. And this is a guy, he's very well respected in his genre. He's got, 25 books in his back end. And he was despairing because he wasn't making as much money as he had in previous years. In fact, in 2020, he'd even ramped up his marketing spend in order to try to make up for the poor sales. And he ended up losing money because, he spent more than he was making in an attempt to try to stem the bleeding, I guess you could say. And he didn't understand what he was doing wrong. And he specifically told me that, every year at the end of the year, especially in the 20 books group, authors like to kind of post screenshots of their book reports where they kind of share the amount of money that they made over the course of the year. And he was talking about how he saw people who maybe released one book, their entire career. Like in 2020, they released one novel and made $25,000 off that novel. And he saw other people who were like, oh, I made, $250,000 off my books this year, or I made $1 million off my books this year, or whatever. And, he looks at these people and he's like, what am I doing wrong? What is it that they're doing that I'm not? How can a person with one book be making $25,000 in a month when I have 25 books in my back end and, I'm barely scraping by at 4 figures a month? And so I just wanted to make this video to talk to the other authors out there who are like my friend, who are looking at the success of other people and getting frustrated and worrying about money and things of that nature. So the first thing I want to tell you is that 2020 was an exception to the rule. And what I mean by that is that very few independent authors were actually very successful in 2020. The ones who were the most successful are the ones who are consistently successful year to year. They have big operations, they have big marketing budgets, they have lots of marketing going out there. They have their craft down to a business. And, these are the people like the Michael Anderles, the Mark Dawsons, people like that. And I'm not saying that they're bad or anything like that. I'm just saying that they understand the business to the point where they're not really indie authors anymore. They're more like indie publishers, or I should say just regular publishers. Their business is so fine-tuned that they're making an easy mid 6 figures to 7 figures every year. And to compare yourself to people like that, if you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of books in your back catalog, or even if you just have like 20 to 30 books in your back catalog, it's not fair to yourself to compare to the big guys in the field. Now, when you compare yourself to other people who maybe have just like one book in their pipeline or whatever, and they're doing really well off that one book, it's not a good idea to compare yourself to that either. What I mean by this is that every independent author in the business has their own story. And I'm not talking about the stories they write. I'm talking about the stories that they have personally, as in their career is the story. And so, you can't compare yourself to other authors if you're not in their same genre, if you're not in their same subgenre, if you're not at the same level of their marketing, and so on and so forth. You have to look at yourself as an isolated figure who has his or her own kind of path to follow. And when you compare yourself to other people, there's a lot of unknowns in that comparison. So for instance, like you don't know how much money they've spent on marketing. That person who released one book and made $25,000 on that book might have secretly spent $30,000 or $40,000 marketing. You just don't know. But like maybe they're trying to make themselves feel better by bragging about how well they did without telling you how much it cost them to do that. That being said, they might have made $25,000 without spending anything. You just don't know. And so the first thing I want to communicate to all you guys out there is not to compare yourself to other people. Look at other people's success. Tell yourself, yes, I'm happy for them. I want to personally achieve that level of success myself, but don't punish yourself for not having that same success. When I was in Hollywood, there was a big joke among screenwriters and actors and directors and stuff like that where, we were an overnight success. It only took us 20 or 30 years to get there. It's different for everybody. Everybody's story is different. And so the first thing I want you guys to realize is that if you start comparing yourself to other people in this business who are more successful than you, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get upset because you're going to make yourself feel helpless. And 2020 was really good at isolating us because of these lockdowns and making us feel like we were disconnected from everything else. And when we look at other people's success and we feel helpless because we don't know how to achieve that success, it's detrimental in the long run to your mental health and your goals as an author to make a full-time living. Now, speaking personally, 2020 was a very difficult year because my girlfriend slash fiance, she was furloughed from her job. And so her income dried up almost overnight. And what was normally, normally I was able to just kind of write my books as I saw fit and not have to worry about bills because I was making enough to take care of myself and her a little bit, but her second income really helped us out, especially with our child. But when she was furloughed, I was forced to take on other work. And that cut into my writing time. And so I can no longer say that I'm a full-time independent author. I'm a part-time independent author. And there's a little bit of shame associated with that because it's tempting to think that you failed if you have to take on other work as a writer, as opposed to just focusing on your novels. And that was something that I had to struggle with personally. But to me, the pride comes in being able to take care of my family as opposed to just saying like, oh, I'm really good at this one thing and I'm making a lot of money doing it. So even though, I had to take on other work, I made the decision not to feel shame about it, not to say, oh, I couldn't cut it as an independent author, therefore I'm a loser. It's very tempting to do that, especially when you're in a creative field that's very solitary as you are as a writer. So to those of you out there who aren't making a full-time living, I just want you to know that you're not a loser for not being able to make a full-time living off your work. If you have to take another job in order to get by, there's no shame in that. You have to do what it takes to support yourself. You got to realize that some of the most well-known authors throughout history were very poor. Dostoevsky, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. Whoever wrote Crime and Punishment, that guy. Tolstoy. I'm embarrassing myself with my ignorance on literature here, but these are guys who were very poor all the time. They died in poverty. Charles Dickens, like he was a guy, he only, he get paid by the word. So his books were very, very thick. So he'd have to write a lot of this stuff in order to get by. And a lot of the pulp writers of the past, couple of decades who wrote for a living. People like Robert Heinlein, for instance, like he was someone who he would just like keep pumping out story after story because if he didn't write, he didn't eat. He wasn't able to make a living. So, being an author to begin with is a very kind of daunting prospect because you're not going to make a whole lot of money to begin with. Now, that's not to say you can't make a lot of money, but the path it takes to get there can sometimes be very long and hard. So if you're just making, a couple $1,000s a year off of your writing, don't get discouraged. Don't worry about it. There are ways that you can build up your business so that you can start making that money on a consistent basis so that you can be a full-time author. But it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of perseverance. And that's one of the things I wanted to mention as well is that don't be frustrated if you're not seeing the type of success you want right away. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I've been at this for 9 years. I'm still not at the six-figure mark. But I feel like the more effort and time and attention I put into this, the better my results can be. And a lot of this has to do with the amount of content that one puts out. So I have a very good friend of mine who is a very well-known, well-respected science fiction author. And in 2020, he wrote 10 books and released all 10 books. So he had almost a book a month over the course of 2020. And every time he released a book, he thought he'd make more money, but he actually was working twice as much as he normally did and making half as much as he normally did. So even though he upped his production level, he wasn't making the amount of money he was expecting to. And that was very frustrating for him. And this is a guy who makes six figures on his books every year. So even the well-established people were having a hard time with 2020. And you would think that with everyone going through lockdowns and stuck at home, that they would have extra time to read. So you would see an increase in book sales and stuff like that. But one of the things that you have to remember is that there are different factors that go into, book sales and book success. With the lockdowns that were happening, you have to remember that the main core readership, like the hardcore readers, the people who read, 2-3 books a week or something like that, they're primarily, women who are also mothers, like stay-at-home moms type things. And normally, these women have a great deal of time throughout the day with which to, sit back and read. But with 2020 and the lockdowns, you have to realize that a lot of the core reader base for Kindle and stuff like that, they were at home having to take care of their kids, educate their kids because the schools were closed down. They may have had to look for work that they could do while they're at home, and sometimes doing both, so taking care of the kids at the day and then doing some type of other job in the evening. So a lot of the core readership base during 2020 was actually robbed from us. It's not that more people had leisure time with which to read, it's that more people had time with which they had to either take care of their families or go out looking for an alternate source of income. So, 2020 is stressful for everyone, but on the book sales front, there were a lot of things that were, kind of keeping us from achieving the type of sales that we're normally used to. And a lot of people aren't thinking about it like that. They're just looking at like, why are my sales down? I don't understand what's going on, without seeing the broader picture. And so once you understand that there are other factors at play, you'll know that 2020 was a crap year, not because of anything you did, but because of just the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And this happens in business. A lot of people out there might not be used to running their own business, being an entrepreneur, stuff like that. And you have to realize that that business ebbs and flows. Sometimes you have really good years and sometimes you have really bad years. And 2020 across the board was a bad year. I think I could count on one hand the number of people I know that did really well in 2020. Every other author friend of mine that I've spoken to has really struggled with it. People who are normally very successful are like, wow, like my income got cut in half. I don't know why. I've put out more books this year than I ever have before, but I've made less money. So across the board, people are feeling stressed. They're feeling like failures, and they're feeling frustrated. And I guess there's some sort of, I guess you'd call it misery loves company type thing where, if we all know that everyone's struggling and that, 2020 was an exception to the rule, it can kind of make us feel a little bit better. But the thing that I really want to communicate to you guys, the vast majority of you who are maybe like, just starting out, only have one book in the pipeline, or some of you who've been at this for a while and have multiple books in your catalog, and who are feeling, kind of overwhelmed and put upon and frustrated and angry and sad and depressed or what have you, I want you to know that it's going to be okay. And the reason I know this is because eventually things are going to get back to normal. This year, your focus needs to be on one thing and one thing only. It needs to be on you, okay? If you need to take another job in order to support yourself and your family, that's okay. You can do that. There's no shame in it. If you want to focus on your writing and really put everything you have into creating more content and getting more books ready for release, do that. But make sure that you can afford to do that. Don't put yourself in the poorhouse. Don't stop paying rent. Don't starve to death. Make sure that you have your basic needs taken care of. But if that's your focus, let that be your focus. Do not compare yourself to other people. If you see other people having success in this market, use that as a source of inspiration to say, yes, I want to have that type of success. But don't compare yourself to those people. Don't say, why are they having success and I'm not? Okay? Success comes with time, effort, and opportunity. You have to bide your time, prepare for the success, and then when the opportunity presents itself, you will see success. Doing things like focusing on building an email list, creating a marketing plan, working on new books. These are 3 things that you can be doing right now in order to prepare yourself for when things get back to normal. Once school starts going and kids are leaving the house again and businesses start reopening and things of that nature, you're going to see things start to return to normal. But until that time, you have to do what it takes in order to get by. Some of you may need to cut your marketing expenses back and just, sit on that money or that opportunity until things get back to normal. Some of you may need to, stop working on the books that you're working on in order to take another job. Whatever your situation is, that's your personal story that you have to focus on. But don't get discouraged by it. If your dream is to be a full-time author, keep following that dream, but give yourself time to achieve it. It doesn't have to happen right now, especially in a time of crisis. Me personally, I'm struggling with finding the time to work between doing these extra jobs that I'm taking on and, taking care of my fiance and our child and just my family in general, and also taking care of my friends. Because I have had friends that have fallen on hard times because of, current circumstances. And I've opted to use what resources I have to make sure that they're well taken care of as well. So, when I say everyone has their own story, this is my story that I'm sharing with you guys. And I want you to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things that I've kind of decided to do this year is to make more videos explaining things that I'm doing in order to achieve my dream. And I'm hoping that these videos will inspire other people to achieve their dream. It's not going to be woo-woo like, inspirational video stuff. Kind of like, I guess, how this video might be, even though, I don't really think this video is very inspirational. But I'm going to be sharing with you guys kind of like the down and dirty efforts that I'm taking in 2021 to further my writing career. Things like workflow, like how I go about writing my books. Things like marketing, like how to make a marketing plan, how to split test ads, how to write ads. Things that most people don't even think about. Stuff like cover design, stuff like, how to write a good book blurb for Amazon, audiobook creation, like a bunch of stuff that lots of people talk about, but they really don't give you any real advice on how to go about doing them the right way. And, being the, mid-level author I am, making my low 5 figures every year, I can't promise you that everything I'm going to share with you is going to blow you out of the water and help you achieve your goals. But it might be able to spark an idea or put you on the right direction, or even just make you feel better. I mentioned previously that I talked to a friend of mine for an hour and a half about his, frustrations. And I was able to give him advice that actually made him feel a lot better. By the time that phone call was winding to a close, he actually said to me, "Thank you so much for doing this. I feel so much better. You've given me a lot of good advice and direction with which to go. And, I wish there were more people like you in this field that I could talk to in order to get that type of inspiration." And that's what really motivated me to make this video and is going to motivate me to make future videos, is that, we don't all have friends in this industry that we can talk to, or people who understand what we're going through. Family members who aren't in the author business might not understand the creative frustrations in addition to the business frustrations, and so on and so forth. And the people at the very top of the game who are very successful may not have the time or the inclination to kind of, descend down upon us mere mortals and share their advice with us. So I just, from my kind of mid-level point of view, wanted to give you guys a different perspective, maybe inspire you a little bit, or at least share in your misery, and know that 2020 was a crap year for, I think, 95% of the indie author community. There's a few exceptions to that. There are some people who had a very good year or who had a year comparable to previous ones. But for the most part, across the board, everyone was pretty much down in terms of like book sales and income and maybe even creative output. So I just wanted to share that with you guys and know that, 2020 was tough for a lot of people, and 2021 looks like, it's going to be tough again, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel here. And I hope that you will join me in working towards our goals in this coming year so that by the time 2022 rolls around, we're back to the good old days. Everyone's making money, everyone's happy, everyone's creatively fulfilled, and we're all just having a really good time. All right, guys, from the heart, this is Matthew Kadish. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try to make more of these and have them be a little bit more focused on specific strategies that you can follow in order to achieve success in the author field. And I will talk to you guys later. Peace.